airplane in the United States is defined, so I apologize for the geographical political incorrectness. As a shorthand, when I refer to American parrots or parrots of the United States, I'm just referring to the continental or contiguous United States. I'm not talking about Hawaii or Puerto Rico. Those are also very interesting situations, but they're not the topic of today's talk. So if you don't know, in the United States, there are or were 3 native or indigenous species of parrots. The Carolina parakeet, very widespread, very abundant. Some said it was the second most abundant bird in North America, other than the passenger pigeon. It was completely shot out by the 1930s. Very unfortunately, the thick-billed parrot is a species originally endemic to both Mexico and the United States. The northern range of the thick-billed parrot extended into Arizona and New Mexico. Like the Carolina parakeet, thick-billed parrots were shot out of the United States in the 1930s. A reintroduction program was undertaken in the 80s, but that was not successful. The birds did not survive more than a year or two. The species still lives in Mexico, although its range has shrunk. And lastly, the red-crowned parrot, extremely common now, but also it's a species in Mexico, and the northern range of that species is believed to have always extended into southern Texas. So most of the birds in Texas are now the result of the pet trade, but we believe that there have always been some wild birds in southern Texas as a northern population expansion of the Mexican population. So 3 species, 1 globally extinct, 1 locally extinct, thick-billed parrot. And the red-crowned parrot still survives, although most of the birds, as we'll hear later, most of the birds in the United States now are the result of introductions. So only 3 species, but of course many hundreds have been imported in the United States through the pet trade. The best available data on importations for the legal commercial reasons comes from the Chinese trade database. So since 1975, more than 3 million parrots of 271 species have been imported into the United States. Of course, this is only legal importations. Of course, this does not include any birds imported before 1975. And most people accept the approximate number for the last century of about 10 million individuals of about 300 species of parrots are imported. There are only about 390 approximately species of parrots in the world, so about 70% of all the species of parrots in the world have been brought into the United States for the pet trade. This changed, of course, it varied by country. The EU has a different date for when they excluded importations of endangered parrots. In the United States, the Wild Bird Conservation Act was enacted in 1992, so in 1993 was the last importations, and so importations completely fell basically to 0 in 1993. These was just the 4 most common species that were imported. So of the 271 species of birds that have been, species of parrots that have been imported, in Florida alone, 75 species have been seen in the wild. And if you look across the entire United States, approximately 80 species have been seen in the wild at one time or another. That doesn't mean they're breeding, that doesn't mean they're common. But of those 70 or so, 29 species are now regularly reported on eBird for Christmas bird counts. So 271 species, 70 seen in the wild, and now 29 are regularly seen in the wild. Now you might think that the more birds that were imported, the more birds that we would see in the wild, the greater the likelihood that they would become breeding. That's logical, but it's not correct. This just shows you the total number of birds imported versus the number of birds seen on eBird in 2016. And there are a couple of glaring, interesting points. Oops, sorry, let me go back. So this species is the gray parrot, the African gray parrot, the second most often imported parrot species in the United States, but it has never once been seen in the wild. Similarly, this is Fisher's lovebird, and even though we have 2 different species of lovebirds breeding here, Fisher's lovebird, hundreds of thousands that have been imported. They've never been seen in the wild. So what's the likelihood that a species is seen in the wild? If it is seen in the wild and establishes itself, what's the likelihood that it becomes a breeder? What's the likelihood that it becomes naturalized if it becomes a breeder?